Can't hurt me, David Goggins imagines standing at the edge of an impossibly steep mountain trail, your body already aching from what you've endured, your mind whispering that you've given everything you have. The path ahead seems insurmountable, demanding more than you believe yourself capable of offering. In this moment of perceived limitation, you encounter a profound question that cuts through the noise of exhaustion. What if everything you think you know about your own capacity is merely the opening chapter of a much longer story? David Goggins embodies a radical challenge to our understanding of human potential. His journey from an overweight, trauma-scarred young man to a Navy SEAL and ultra-endurance athlete reveals something unsettling about the boundaries we accept as final. Through his unflinching examination of suffering, discipline, and the architecture of mental toughness, Goggins presents a mirror that reflects not just his own transformation, but the untapped reservoirs that may exist within every human spirit. In an age where comfort often feels like the ultimate goal, his philosophy poses a compelling modern question. Are we unknowingly living at a fraction of our true capacity? And what might we discover if we dared to venture beyond our carefully constructed limits? At the heart of Goggins' philosophy lies what he calls the 40% rule, a concept that suggests when your mind screams that you've reached your absolute limit, you've actually only accessed 40% of your true potential. This isn't merely motivational rhetoric, but a practical recognition of how the brain, acting as a protective guardian, creates psychological barriers long before physical ones become truly insurmountable. You discover that exhaustion often announces itself not as fact, but as the first negotiation in an ongoing conversation between comfort and capability. The implications ripple far beyond physical endurance. In your daily life, you encounter these 40% moments disguised as ordinary limitations. The difficult conversation you avoid, the creative project you abandon at the first sign of struggle, the skill you convince yourself you'll never master. Goggins suggests that these moments aren't endpoints, but invitations to discover what lies in the undiscovered 60%. The mountain trail becomes a metaphor for any challenge, where your initial assessment of impossibility may simply be your comfort zone's way of maintaining its familiar territory. Central to this expansion of capacity is what Goggins calls callusing the mind, a deliberate practice of exposing yourself to controlled hardship to build psychological resilience. Just as physical calluses form to protect areas of repeated friction, mental calluses develop through intentional encounters with discomfort. You begin to understand that avoiding all friction doesn't preserve your sensitivity. It actually increases your vulnerability to life's inevitable challenges. The person who never exercises becomes winded climbing a single flight of stairs, while the person who deliberately seeks physical challenge finds strength they never knew they possessed. This callousing process requires what Goggins frames as embracing the suck, accepting discomfort not as punishment, but as education. You learn that the voice in your head predicting failure or demanding retreat isn't necessarily providing accurate information about your actual capabilities. Instead, it's offering one perspective among many, a perspective often shaped more by past limitations than present possibilities. The art lies in acknowledging this voice without automatically obeying it, creating space between the feeling of difficulty and the decision to quit. Perhaps most practically, Goggins introduces the accountability mirror, a practice of unflinching self-examination that cuts through the stories we tell ourselves about why change isn't possible. Standing before this metaphorical mirror, you confront the gap between who you are and who you claim you want to become. This isn't about self-criticism, but about honest assessment of the daily choices that either move you toward your stated goals or keep you comfortably distant from them. The mirror reflects not just your current state, but your agency in shaping what comes next. The accountability mirror reveals how often we negotiate with our own standards, adjusting our expectations downward rather than adjusting our effort upward. You realize that accountability isn't about perfection, but about consistency, not about never falling, but about the speed with which you choose to rise. In a culture that often prioritizes feeling good over growing stronger, this mirror asks whether your daily actions align with your deepest aspirations or merely with your immediate comfort preferences. In our modern context, Goggins' philosophy takes on particular relevance as we navigate a world that increasingly provides convenience while potentially diminishing resilience. You live in an era where artificial intelligence can handle complex calculations, delivery services eliminate the need to leave home, and entertainment is available at the touch of a screen. While these advances offer undeniable benefits, they also pose a subtle question. Are we inadvertently outsourcing not just tasks, but the very experiences that traditionally built mental toughness and self-reliance? The calloused mind becomes especially valuable in a time when emotional resilience isn't built through daily necessity, but must be cultivated intentionally. You face challenges that previous generations couldn't imagine, from information overwhelm to the psychological pressure of constant comparison through social media. Yet you also have fewer built-in opportunities to practice overcoming genuine hardship. Goggins suggests that this gap between comfort and capacity isn't just personal but cultural, affecting our collective ability to handle adversity when it inevitably arrives. Consider how the 40% rule applies to contemporary challenges like learning new skills in a rapidly changing economy, maintaining relationships through difficult periods, or persisting with creative endeavors in the face of rejection. You encounter these situations not as rare emergencies, but as regular features of a complex life. The question becomes whether you approach them with the mental calluses needed for sustained effort or with the psychological equivalent of soft hands that blister at the first sign of friction. The accountability mirror also reflects our relationship with the endless stream of information and options that characterize modern life. You can research any topic, connect with any community, or pursue any interest. Yet this abundance can paradoxically lead to a diffusion of focus and commitment. The mirror asks not whether you have access to opportunities, but whether you're developing the sustained attention and disciplined effort needed to transform opportunity into meaningful growth. As you consider Goggins' framework, two key insights emerge for carrying forward. First, that your perceived limitations often reveal themselves as starting points rather than end points when examined with sustained attention and deliberate practice. The voice that says, "I can't," may simply be announcing that you haven't yet, not that you never will. Second, that building capacity requires a fundamentally different relationship with discomfort, viewing it not as evidence that you're on the wrong path, but as confirmation that you're engaging with the friction necessary for growth. This leaves you with a lingering question that extends far beyond any single challenge. In a world that increasingly offers the option to optimize for comfort, how do you intentionally choose the kind of discomfort that builds rather than diminishes you? And what might you discover about your own untapped potential if you learn to recognize the difference? You settle into this question knowing that it doesn't demand an immediate answer, but rather a sustained exploration. The mountain trail that seemed impossible from the bottom reveals new perspectives at each turn, and what felt like an ending often transforms into a beginning when approached with patient determination. The 40% rule isn't ultimately about pushing yourself to exhaustion, but about remaining curious about what lies beyond your current conception of possible, staying open to the ongoing revelation of what you might become when you step deliberately beyond the territory you've already mapped.